Hey, it's Amethyst Virgo. These are going to be my top astrology moments of 2022. Now, I've only picked about 6 or 7. So there, of course, are multiple events, stories of 2022 that I'm sure I could go over, but I did not want to spend too much time on multiple events and thought it was best, especially since I'm always trying to teach astrology or to help people understand patterns, to focus on a few stories and really dive deeper into those astrological meanings. So yes, of course, there are things that I did not include here that may be major events for 2022, but I wanted to use the ones that I felt I could best use astrology transits to help us understand more about what actually occurred. So Russia invades the Ukraine. This chart below, I know it's a little hard to see, but that's why I have little captions there. So this chart is for when Russia officially invaded the Ukrainian capital of, again, I'm not well versed in how to pronounce this, but I did look it up, Kiev. So there's different ways to pronounce the capital. Apparently the reasons are because the one way to pronounce it is how the Russians pronounce it, and the other way to pronounce it is how the Ukrainians pronounce it. If you want to for sure know how to pronounce it, because I am not an expert, there is a YouTube video that I watched that is really good on how to pronounce it the correct way. I'm pretty sure the way I pronounced it is not the correct way. It's not a perfect way because there is an inflection in how you're supposed to say, and the vowels in terms of how to say it. So I did want to upfront say that. Now, this chart shows that city, and the sun was in the 3rd house squaring the moon in the 11th house at the time of the invasion. And so the significance here, I think, is, remember, 3rd house can be neighborhood. The 3rd house is local. The 11th house is something more societal. So it can represent something occurring that is going to impact and spread society-wise. It's not just a situation, a circumstance that just impacted that city. Of course, the entire country of the Ukraine, there are still the wars, the conflict is still occurring as we speak. I'm not going to go into depth because this channel is not about talking more about, countries and politics and war, but anyone who has been paying attention knows what's been going on. Astrologically, what I found interesting was the fact that the cusp of the 4th house in this chart of Kiev is Aries. And we know Aries energy can be about an attack. It can be about force. It can be very dominant. So we can't just look at Aries. If you look at the cusp, of course, we have to look at, well, where's the ruler of Aries? Mars. Mars is in Capricorn in this chart, and Mars in the 1st house. Mars in Capricorn is a very military-like placement. Now, I'm not saying that every single person with Mars in Capricorn is like that. Remember, when we're talking about astrology for a human being versus astrology for an event or a country or a situation, you do have to alter the way in which you speak about it, okay? But this would be representing the fact that the capital of Ukraine at this point would have Mars there in the 1st house, which is about assertion, having to protect oneself, but also Venus being there. Mars conjunct Venus typically is a good thing, but if we know that there is an attack, we now understand that this 1st house is showing this kind of need for self-preservation. Capricorn ascended for this moment that is recorded as the first attack. Of course, we know there were multiple subsequent attacks on not just the capital, but other parts of the Ukraine. The Capricorn ascendant, of course, this means Saturn is the chart ruler. We know Saturn is about authority. It is about discipline. It is about structure. But we know that Saturn in Aquarius energy is what? I know what's best for others, even if it's through force or being authoritative. Again, we're not talking about you as a human who has Saturn in Aquarius. Of course, there are people who have Saturn in Aquarius in their chart who are like that. But we have to look at the fact of what is the topic here. That's the biggest thing about astrology. What's the topic we're talking about? And then we need to apply the meanings of the signs and the planets as it fits. Okay, Saturn being in the 2nd house. 2nd house is about resource and money. Any of you who know about the conflict know it's deeper than that, right? We know, if you did your research, the Ukraine has been independent since 1991. That has never really fully sat well with all of Russia. Okay. There's a lot of articles that talk about Putin's motives and why he, this attack occurred. Of course, you can look that up. But you have to understand the motive behind the attack in terms of the conflict, and that this is a brewing conflict. This is not something that was like, no one woke up and said, hey, let's do this. It has been in the works for a while, most likely. This has been something that has been hinted about, most likely. I wouldn't be surprised if there had been fears prior to this leading up. Of course, if you go to read your research, you're going to find all of this already. But this is something that is rooted in a deep history and a conflict between these countries, because as you know, when they were the Soviet Union, Ukraine was a part of the Soviet Union. And so again, it's all history. But astrologically, I think the biggest thing that stood out to me was the fact that Capricorn was the ascendant. And so we are dealing with something that is rooted. There's just a traditional element here of like old energy. This is a conflict that is old. This is something that has been brewing for a while, but also this is an energy that is very much dominated by Mars being in the first house. Mars is the ruler of the first house in astrology, and also Saturn and Capricorn also being energies. If you're talking about an invasion or war, of course you would expect to see certain planets or signs show up that deal with war, conflict, but Sun was in Pisces during this time. So the Sun was during that Pisces season. But we also saw that it was squaring the moon being in Sagittarius, which we know deals with truth and deals with an inner need for optimism. But the Sun is squaring that, right? It is causing friction between those energies, which we know are very important in terms of expression, also in terms of drive and internal drive, which can represent whatever's presenting on the outside doesn't match what's happening on the inside, and really creating difficulty in terms of belief. Whatever behind the attack is a belief. It's not right, it's not right to attack, but anytime there's been war in history or attacks on other countries, there's always the side is saying there's a belief, there's a reason why we're doing this, right? So Brittany Griner is a WNBA player. Ironically, we're talking about astrology, and she played for the Phoenix Mercury. So I found that interesting. But Brittany also played overseas in Russia. So a lot of WNBA players actually can make more money, not just WNBA, but I know some other basketball leagues exist overseas, even for male athletes, where some people can make more money overseas playing basketball than in America. And of course, we may know that, the difference in salaries with the NBA versus the WNBA. Of course, there are reasons behind that. You can look it up, but in general, that's why she was over there, right? She's played basketball for them before. She's been to Russia before. This was not her first time visiting Russia, okay? Keeping that in mind, she was detained in Russia for 5 months. This is during the Russia-Ukraine conflict war, and of course, people are concerned about like, what is this? Is this a political reason to keep her? Is this because of an issue that Russia has with the U.S. in terms of like their support? So of course, that is the conversation happening. So let's look at her natal chart. Brittany is a Libra. She's a Libra with a Capricorn stellium. In this chart, in the middle is her birth chart. Now, we don't know her birth time. Therefore, we can only go by the major planets, what the degrees are. The moon, we do not know for sure what degree her moon is in because we do not have her birth time. But of course, we do see that she's a moon in Libra. She's a sun in Libra. She's a Venus in Libra, Mercury in Libra. She's got a lot of Libra energy in her chart, which told me that she's likely used to existing relationships to gain influence or favorability. She's in life, and I'm not trying to say like there's anything easy just because she's a Libra, but it's like she develops probably good relationships wherever she goes. She knows someone wherever she goes, and like she's used to that probably in America. But anytime a person has Libra energy, which we know is good for social skills, it's good for relatability. But relatability, when you belong to something, right? You're going to another country, and other countries are sometimes more strict in terms of paraphernalia, drug paraphernalia. I forgot to mention she was detained for bringing in her belongings. I believe it was a vape pen and some possessing cannabis oil in her luggage. That's what she was arrested for. So because she was arrested, we have to look at like, well, what's happening in her chart Again, we don't have the transits exactly because we don't know her birth time, but in her chart, she has a stellium in Libra and she's a stellium in Capricorn. Now, I'm not going to go into depth about what it means to have Neptune in Capricorn, Uranus in Capricorn, Saturn in Capricorn. I have videos about that. But the fact that she has Libra planet squaring Capricorn can mean, despite Libra being a major influence in her life in terms of, having good relationships, rapport with other people, going different places, most likely, and knowing someone wherever she goes, and friends and associations and things like that, right? Capricorn is about reality, and it's about limitations and about authority. So regardless of whether she got detained in Russia or not, there was likely going to be an event or have been other events in Britney's life where she hasn't had the benefit of relying on being liked or the benefit of being recognized. Do you understand? So, going to another country and their ways, their laws being different, and not making any exceptions, right? They were not making any exceptions at first. This is not a political channel. I talk about things as it relates to astrology, but you can go read up on, the exchange that was made between the U.S. and Russia in order for her to come back. Point being, she could not rely on that. She had to rely on the law or rely on the literal legal procedures, right? Saturn in Capricorn, she has Saturn in Capricorn in her chart. But again, remember, Saturn is about lessons, and those lessons are often not easy, okay? So that was just something to keep in mind about her natal chart. Now, the day of the arrest. A lot of times when we're looking at event charts, you always want to look at the moon. Because remember, the moon, it changes every 2.5 days. The moon is important in helping us understand aspects between other planets, etc. Aquarius at the time. This is also important because when we have the moon and the sun in Aquarius, this is a very unexpected time. There's a lot of Aquarius energy going on. Mercury's in Aquarius, Saturn's in Aquarius. Now, also, the moon is in opposition throughout the day. So the Jupiter was in Pisces at the time, and so it suggests a shift in the energy. Jupiter is usually about being enthusiastic. It's usually about being on high spirits. But if it's in Pisces, and then you have Virgo, which is about accuracy, this could have been a sort of disbelief type of feeling. Like when she got caught, I believe her and many others didn't think it would go this far. Okay, she got caught with drug paraphernalia. It's, cannabis, and in America, depending on what state you're in, that would not have been a big deal. It wouldn't even have been illegal. But she's in a different country. Okay, so that's important just to note. Now, what's also interesting here is that Uranus was squaring her natal Jupiter when she was arrested. She is obviously, Jupiter's in Leo. So already Jupiter in Leo is great in terms of her ability to be seen and recognized for her talent as a basketball player, okay? However, Jupiter at the time was in Pisces. Not Pisces, I'm sorry. Uranus at the time is in Taurus. Uranus squaring Taurus. Uranus at the 11th degree, squaring Jupiter in Leo. She's arrested for something she's done before. It's kind of like without penalty. If she traveled somewhere else, it probably wasn't a big deal, but this day was different, okay? Now, Britney was released recently in December. When she was released, I want to say it was the 8th. I'm not 100% sure. If we look here, I pulled up, again, this is not her birth chart because I don't have her birth time, but the moon was in Gemini, and Mars is in retrograde in Gemini the day that she is released. What's important is, remember, Mars in Gemini retrograde started out at the 25th degree in October. So the more that Mars is going a little bit backwards at degrees, it's hitting people who have that 15, 16, 14, right? Those degrees. So it's just interesting to note that, and again, Gemini energy is about information. Information had to be exchanged. There was a lot of talk between Russia. There had to be movements. Remember, Mars and Gemini is not just about talking. Mars is about action. So there was that exchange, right? From her for another prisoner, right? For Brittany Griner. So that is just something I thought was interesting, is how close that Mars transit was to Brittany's natal Mars when she finally was released. Now, in 2020, Megan Thee Stallion was shot in both feet. At the time, originally, it was unclear what happened. In the beginning, it seemed like she tried to save, face or not tell who did it. she didn't want him to get in trouble. She even said herself she was uneasy about calling the police just because of how sometimes, for people, Black people, people of color calling the police, in some cases, it just has led to there being, people being unnecessarily shot, things like that. So that's what she said. So the case against Tory Lanez was about shooting her. Now, of course, he was found guilty on the 23rd. Now, the whole situation between them was very interesting because there's so many different stories around, like, were they seeing each other? She allegedly got mad. He was flirting with Kylie Jenner, and then apparently he might have been also seeing her friend Kelsey. There's like a lot going on there, right? And I'm not even 100% sure, but it does seem like there was some type of situation between her and Tory. Now, of course, this is before her current relationship. She is dating the rapper Party, so this is before him. So point being, when I first saw what they are, Aquarius sun, Leo sun, it's like, I see people a lot with these placements being drawn to other people, right? Look at this. Mercury in Aquarius, he's a Mercury in Leo. These are opposite sign energies. When you look at the opposite sign energy in their charts, it's almost like, I think even if this didn't get to this extreme with there being a shooting, there would have been, they would have always kind of been, in competition with each other. I just think these charts, they would have always been in competition with each other. I'm sensing that even before this incident happened, that their relationship, whether it was friendship or not, was very like, I could see them as people that kind of rag on each other. You know, those type of people you've met that it's like, they kind of always are combative, but it's supposed to be playful, especially with like her being Mercury in Aquarius, the 5th degree. It's like this kind of she can be very sarcastic probably at times. And Mercury in Leo is, I'm not going to let anyone, talk about me like that. You know what I mean? He talks a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if he talks a big game. He is Mercury in Leo. And there's nothing wrong with Mercury in Leo. I'm Mercury in Leo, but he's also a Leo. And Mercury in Leo is at the 15th degree. So he's a chatterbox, I bet you. He talks a lot. And I'm pretty sure that helps him in his rap career. Now his Venus, I just looked it back up. His Venus in Leo is at the 16th degree, which means it is actually conjunct her Mars. Her Mars energy, she's very, not just, talented, very sure of herself. Though I do think that over the years, Megan has gone through a lot of changes in terms of knowing who to be around and who not to be around. I do think that she's developing and blossoming into, especially hopefully after this experience in terms of like who she's becoming, who she is. But the point is like, he's a Leo person. There's always there is a need for self, like I'm important, but she's a moon in Leo, and the Leo moon person is about, but I'm also important, right? So even if they had maintained a relationship, friendship, there would have always been a competitive nature that I don't think really works well together. Now, unfortunately, it ended in a shooting. But if we look here, her having Venus in Capricorn, I also think her having Jupiter square Saturn, it's like it's about lesson learning. The fact that she has Jupiter squaring Saturn, she's learning her lessons sometimes the hard way. Not to say that anybody deserves what happened to her, but I mean, that's kind of the only way some people will learn is going to be through situations that require you to kind of think a little bit more about where you are and who you're around. I do think with her having Venus sextile Saturn, there's an opportunity there. For her to associate herself with people that care more about their image. Even with her having Venus in Capricorn, 11th degree, her being an Aquarius sun, I do think that in time, she's doing a lot of great things in terms of like she did Saturday Night Live, but she's been through a lot. She lost her mom a couple years ago. I think like at the beginning of like her fame, someone broke into her house a couple months ago. Like she's been going through a lot, just, in the industry as well. Tory, I don't know as much about, but I would say that one thing that he needs to be careful of or should have been careful of, and I did a video already about this where I talked about people going through their Saturn in Aquarius, and especially people going through Saturn in Aquarius who are in the entertainment industry, okay? The entertainment industry is Leo energy. He is a Leo. Okay, people going through Saturn Aquarius are sometimes having this kind of conflict within this energy because He's supposed to be learning a lesson. But again, Saturn in Aquarius energy is not about ego. Doesn't like ego. So people who are Leos, going through Saturn return, it is learning this kind of balance between who you are and what you represent, and also what you give to the collective. So, I'm not surprised. There's many people with the Saturn Aquarius return. If you are not really learning your lesson, it is coming at you full force. Remember, Saturn rules Aquarius in traditional astrology. That Saturn, anytime you have a Saturn return in a placement that it rules, it is going to be strong. And for some people, they're winning. There are people winning during their Saturn Aquarius. They're learning their lesson. They are doing the work on themselves. His Venus also opposes Saturn in his birth chart, which can denote some difficulties in terms of like relating to others, or in terms of understanding fully what he how to maintain really successful relationships. That can be a difficulty. He has Venus square Pluto, right? Allegations against people who are friends or who he's in a relationship with. Again, we don't know the extent of that situation, but it's like there's many placements in his chart that are indicating the importance of like, one, self-awareness. Though Leo energy can be quite talented, there are many people that apparently like his music. I've just never heard it, but it is important to have self-awareness. Now, will he learn his lesson? That is the important thing. If he's smart, he will. Let's look here. 12/23/22, he's found guilty. Now here, my channel, I'm not arguing with people about whether you think he is, you think he did it. He was found guilty, right? We're looking at the astrology of it. Okay, we're not arguing about these conspiracy theories right now. Now, the sun and moon were conjunct in Capricorn at the time, which I think is symbolic of Capricorn energy being about discipline and authority. The overall consensus is clear. What people thought happened did. Right? In all intents and purposes, that's what it's saying. Now, Moon in Capricorn at the time was sextile his natal Jupiter in Virgo. And I wonder if some of that is around lessons in accuracy. He's learning a lesson in justice, in due diligence, and correction. He is Jupiter in Virgo. People with Jupiter in Virgo, you learn the best lessons. You're going to be the most free when you learn how to self-correct. When you self-correct, a world is going to open up for you. And again, shooting, gun violence, all those things, it's not something I stand for or by in any way, shape, or form. But if he, if he wants to look at this as something where he can learn his lesson and be humble. Remember, Virgo energy is about humility. Astrology doesn't care about what yes, you can talk about feelings with astrology and water signs, but it's like, astrology is what it is. There's rules. It's very spiritual. Like, it is what it is. Whether you like him, you're a fan of Megan, you don't like her, you don't like him. At the end of the day, his Jupiter's in Virgo. That's what he needs to learn, humility. Now, because, after the shooting, there wasn't this outpour of, like there was the texts and, now the phone call to, from, to Kelsey has been released and leaked. There's a lot going on here, right? But there were things also that were said about the situation that were making a joke of it. And that's the thing with Leo, is that defense mechanism. I'm okay, right? Trying to make it a joke to hide what he was really feeling. We don't know if he's a Gemini moon or a Cancer moon, and that is because on the day he was born, the moon changed signs. In this case, it's kind of hard to tell. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a Gemini moon, but we don't know. I also think it's important to note the day that he was found guilty, the sun in Capricorn conjuncted Megan's Venus in Capricorn, and also transiting Venus conjuncted her natal Venus. Okay, so there was a couple things at play here. And again, I don't think that astrology is necessarily what controls every single thing. It's just that things sometimes coincide with certain energies, right? And we can see them kind of coming forth with this particular transit on this date. But think about it, right? Anything conjuncting Venus. Remember, Venus in Capricorn can be about being seen as someone worthy of being esteemed or respected. Now, obviously, this is a legal procedure, right? It's not a court of opinion. It is not, when you're going through a trial, obviously there's a jury, there's evidence, there's experts, there's witnesses. We know that. But think of Venus as social standing, support, and appreciation. So When there's a favorable aspect to your Venus, sometimes that does indicate things happening favorably for you. Of course, I'm sure no, she didn't want to go through this entire ordeal in the first place, but that is something just to keep in mind. For sure, in 2022, there were a lot of conversations continuing about work, especially remote work. There were mass layoffs from certain companies. Now, what was interesting about this is you noticed a lot of more conversations around layoffs happening via Zoom, via technology. That's a very Uranus, Aquarius type of thing that I'm going to talk about in a moment. But also, we know that, we are basically 2 years past the pandemic at this point. The height of the pandemic, obviously COVID-19 is still around. However, people have largely learned to live with it, right? People have, started to resume normal activities, etc., including companies calling for people to go back into buildings to work, which some people have argued is not necessary for certain jobs. For certain jobs, it might be, easier sometimes to have people who are working remote. Some people have complained that they've brought people back in the office only to still have Zoom meetings. So it's a lot of interesting things happening that I think we can really, point to this placement that has been happening for a couple of years. Now, Uranus has been in Taurus for a while at this point. Saturn has been in Aquarius for about 2.5 years. Uranus and Taurus, I want to say, it's been about 4 or 5 years. Either way, that there was a lot of squares happening between this energy this year. And because of that, you have that kind of Saturn and Aquarius energy where people are coming together as a collective because people are upset at the restrictions Saturn being placed on them. And, when Saturn's in Aquarius, it can sometimes want to disrupt things in a way to produce something that they feel is going to be more sustainable long term. A lot of the things that people are fighting for or concerned about are about long-term solutions to this, right? Uranus and Taurus has been there for a while, we know, but Uranus squaring Saturn is that's that fight between tradition, between discipline. Saturn is an energy that sometimes it's not always bad, right? Saturn can be great in terms of creating a system, authoritative, things that allow for there to be structure. However, Uranus is about freedom. And so this is battle for a healthy balance, right? Which would be ideal. So battle for workers' rights has been happening for a while. This has been going on since 2020. Okay. Now, 2020 was different, where people had to urgently adapt to working virtually in many industries. Obviously, there were some industries where it's impossible to work virtually, but there was this shift. Now, as things return back to normal, and of course, there are going to be certain things that never completely return back to normal due to COVID, but because of that, this shift is now more being, put upon people in a way that's making people uncomfortable because they've gotten used to working from home, and there's benefits to that. Some people don't like the office politics. Some people feel that it's, they feel that they are, they're not bothered as much because they get to work at home without having a lot of distractions. In the workplace, sometimes there are distractions. Of course, the workplace can also bring benefits in terms of, there is something different about being around people in person, that even myself as an introvert, sometimes being in person around people really helps the relationship, because online, it's a different energy. But when you meet someone in person, you actually get to engage with what they are, their energetic field is like. So I can, attest to that. But the mass return to in-person work has caused tension between workers in some companies. I know Twitter was one of them as well, where once, it was taken over by Elon Musk, he started, really, clamping down on those who could work from home. Technology is largely affected. Of course, Saturn is in Aquarius, Uranus is in Taurus. Regardless of that square, we know that Uranus and Aquarius energy deals with technology. It deals with, information systems that require us to use tech, computers, etc. And so you did see a lot of these layoffs happening, again, via technology, Zoom, or through in the tech field, in the tech industry, which at one point was, booming. It was getting, stronger, but we do see that there's been some layoffs. And more people are quitting their jobs via social media. It's a very, Aquarius type thing, especially it's probably a lot of folks also who are affected by Aquarius energy or Saturn energy. You have a lot of people going through their Saturn Aquarius between, the ages 27, 30 right now. And so for many people, it's an outlet to show how disgruntled they are. You're seeing a lot of people on social media film their workplace and talk about what happened, or people filmed, quitting on video camera and things like that. Now, people are filming this, people are showing this. The other thing with filming, think about film, record. Like, I know a lot of this is we're talking about Aquarius. Remember, filming is Pisces as well. You have Jupiter and Pisces. Jupiter's been bouncing between Aries and Pisces, right, for a bit. Neptune is in Pisces, right? Influence is also a factor because it's also people trying to dive into what they really want, okay? So there's a couple things going on there. Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen, sorry for mispronouncing her last name, their divorce really shocked a lot of people because they are a power couple. They have been together a long time. I want to say 13 years. I don't 100% recall. I don't really follow either of their careers, but we know Tom Brady is a very, famous NFL player, and Gisele Bündchen is a former supermodel. So, both had their own careers. Obviously, Tom's kind of took center stage for a while. While it was a very typical type of situation. She tended to the family, and he was on the road a lot. And apparently, they had made a decision for him to retire. He didn't retire, and it sounds like the career decision to not retire and spend more time with family is the reason why part of the reason. I'm sure with any divorce, there's a multitude of things, even if there is a primary reason. Either way, I'm not surprised that they were together for so long. I think their relationship is an example of just because something ended does not mean that there wasn't good synastry between the couple. Doesn't mean there wasn't good energy between the couple. Doesn't mean that there weren't reasons of what drew them together. So, for example, I'm not going to go through every single thing with their charts, but he's a Leo sun, she's a Cancer sun. I find that pairing works really well, especially when it's a Leo man and a Cancer woman. Those dynamics tend to, if we're just going off sun sign astrology, obviously there's more to it, but you do see those couples a lot, or I do see those types of couples a lot. Because Leo and Cancer are both very into family. And obviously different ways. Of course, he's a Leo sun though with the moon in Aries. You have to understand a moon in Aries person is always, even when they are looking out for their family or looking out for you, moon is about self-loyalty. And him kind of, backtracking or not going forward with what he promised in terms of when he was going to retire, and her just kind of feeling like, things aren't going to change. That's the vibe I get. And that's kind of what I've heard, that there's this kind of agreement they had where she wanted him to spend more time with the family. Eventually it was going to happen. And then for some reason it didn't. So you have to understand that a Leo sun with a moon in Aries person, especially who's an athlete, who's also successful, it is hard for that person to turn down opportunities to help them achieve the things they think they want to. His sun is also conjunct Saturn in the 10th house. We do have birth charts for both of these individuals. And so I'm not going to go over every single thing, but because of that, we do understand how important image is to him, how important status is going to be to him, right? The sun in conjunct Saturn, 10th house, he's not willing to give that up yet. And it might be that a part of his identity is in his career as a football player, and he's kind of afraid to let that go. Who am I without this? Now, of course, that's something he would need to dive in on his own to figure out. Gisele, again, Cancer sun, Scorpio moon. It was interesting because a few years ago it came out that she, practiced witchcraft, or Tom said something to allude to her rituals for him, for game day or things like that. And so it was interesting, she has this water sign energy, and it doesn't mean that every single water sign person is necessarily, practicing witchcraft or doing spells, etc. But it's not surprising, She also is from Brazil, and Brazil, they do have, you know, there are some cultural types of practices that people do that is related to, you know, being in touch more with, like, you know, traditional rituals, spells, and things like that. But what I found interesting, with that moon in Scorpio, is she's not detaching from what she needs. And I think that's the part of it. I think for Giselle, she could have just said, okay, Tom, okay, it's on your terms, fine. But like, you're dealing with two people with very strong moon signs. You know, they're both moon signs ruled by Mars. And you know, with Scorpio, there's more that Pluto undercurrent. She's probably been brewing and feeling this for a very long time. And I do think for this couple, it was probably a very hard decision. I don't necessarily get an indication that either one's the bad guy or whatever. I do know that, let me look this up. I think I saw this. I saw that Tom Brady is already dating. Okay, he's already dating someone. So he's dating another model. Okay, now Leo does like their image, you know. But that's just something interesting that I found quite interesting in terms of his chart. I mean, his Venus is in Cancer in the 1st degree. You know, I see a lot of times with people with Cancer energy, especially in relationships, especially with people who are attracted to women, you know, whether it's a man, you know, attracted to women or a woman attracted to a woman, typically you are going to see, like, there's always a woman, right? When there's someone with Cancer energy in their chart. So that is something interesting. Now also her Cancer sun, Scorpio moon, her Venus is square Saturn. I said this in one of my last videos where I talked about placements that can indicate a person who is unmarried or unattached, that some placements don't mean that you're never going to experience love, relationship, or marriage. It can just show an event that is likely to happen. Venus squaring her Saturn. Remember, Saturn is about situations that can last a long time. Saturn is time. Venus, the relationship, square. So it can mean a person who is likely at some point in their life to have divorce or to have some type of disruption within their relationship, even if there's someone that typically is lucky in relationships, okay? Her Juno's in Libra. I mean, her ideal relationship, whether it was Tom or not, Juno, her Juno in Libra is about, has to be someone who's willing to put in the same effort she is. Someone who's interested more in sharing the load, equal distribution. And I would wonder if that's probably part of it as well. Like, you know, wanting to feel like she's not doing some of the parenting alone. And again, people who have very demanding careers are not going to always be able to be at home, obviously. But what's interesting, he has Juno in Scorpio, and she's a Scorpio moon. And so I do think that, like, for him, she taught him a lot. Like, I think throughout this relationship, he's learned a lot. And with the being in retrograde, that can indicate that your Juno relationship is not, hey, this is the sign of the person. It's, you know, this is who you're going to be with forever. I tell people that all the time. There's no magic wand. Life is complex. But I do think that it's more of a significant, that I feel like she might have met his Juno need. I don't know if he necessarily met her Juno need through Libra. Okay. His Venus is trine her moon. His Venus is in Cancer. Her moon is in Scorpio. So that was a positive connection beyond them, you know, both being family oriented or wanting a family. You know, again, Cancer is more domestic. Like, she's feeling like, I put my career on hold. What I'm getting, and again, this is not me reading anything on this because I don't know a lot about them beyond what I've seen here and there. I'm getting that she's like, I've lost out on opportunities because I was tending to the family. And she might even be feeling like, if I had someone kind of sharing the load or able to be, you know, more, you know, me not having to do this or travel or be with the kids or do whatever, then maybe I could have, you know, took on different opportunities. Like, as a Cancer woman, mom, she wants to be there, right? I get the idea, like, even though she could hire, like, maybe you do have nannies, right? Like, there's something that was holding her back in this relationship from feeling completely fulfilled, even though I do sense from both of their energy, like, this is a very hard decision. This is not, like, this is a couple that seemed pretty locked in, you know. Her Venus is in Gemini at the 19th degree, and I think this also speaks to this idea she had. Remember, Venus is dealing with what we likes or dislikes. Venus and Gemini individuals like and appreciate when the people around them like follow their ideas. Like, you know, they get a great kind of sense of connection through communication. And so I think when he didn't announce, he after saying he was going to retire, he didn't, that kind of fell through with the plans that she had. She also has Jupiter in Virgo, which is also something I'll talk about in a moment. And so with that, you know, with Venus and Gemini, the 19th degree, this kind of, you know, desire and need for things to, partnerships to form in ways that help her feel a sense of validation. The 19th degree is a partnership degree. I've talked about that before in the degree system video. And you know, Venus and Gemini, doesn't surprise me that, you know, she's been rumored as well as Tom to be dating. Now, Tom, there's actually someone that he is considered his girlfriend, apparently. With Giselle, it's just been kind of like rumors. You know, there's one man that was mentioned. But with the Venus and Gemini, I wouldn't be surprised if she has kind of like a flirtatiousness to her, or a very like open type of way, but also in a way she's kind of mysterious. She's kind of, you know, she's not a complete open book, but she does draw attention. And, you know, she's a Cancer sun. There's a kind of warmth there, but Scorpio moon preserved. I do think that it'll take her longer to completely move on. You know, if she does find someone that she wants to be committed to, she's probably really committed, but it's, you know, I think with him, he's more likely to kind of move a little bit faster than her, I would say, based on his placements, but also with Venus and Cancer in the first degree. The first degree is an Aries degree. He's a moon in Aries, okay? Also, one thing I did not put on this slide, but that I did see is they both have Jupiter in their 9th houses, which can indicate having a spouse that's foreign, or a spouse that's from a different country as you, right? So we know Giselle was born in Brazil. Tom obviously was born in the U.S. So just something that's interesting. They both live in the U.S. now, obviously, but Jupiter being the 9th house sometimes can indicate that in terms of, you know, spouse. So Tom's Mars in Gemini is square her Jupiter in Virgo. And, you know, when we look at that, it can be like, well, so what? But Mars in Gemini, like it's the Mars in Gemini, moon in Aries, Leo, man, who is, you know, still wants to, you know, kind of bring forth some of the ideas that he has about his career. You know, he has something he's trying to prove to himself. That is what I will say about all this. He is proving something to himself, okay? And everyone may not fully understand it, especially her, but with his Mars being in Gemini squaring her Jupiter and Virgo, it's like they're at odds. You know, he has an idea, Mars, that he needs to carry forth, you know? And again, Mars and Gemini can sometimes switch and change. She was upset because apparently they had talked about this. They had agreed on this, and it didn't, you know, he didn't retire. Jupiter and Virgo, it's about this desire and need to feel that you can, you know, plan or have the adventures that you want. Jupiter's about journey. So this square between their energy can mean this did come about as something that became something they were either at odds about, fighting over maybe. And I don't mean fighting literally, but the thing to note is sometimes things in relationships don't fully come to be an issue until later on. Again, with that moon in Scorpio, she stuck it out. Like she was willing to be in there for the long haul. That is very typical of a Cancer sun, moon in Scorpio. But once she felt he was putting himself before the family, that is when it seemed like she got more serious about, you know, really questioning. And again, I'm not saying who's right, who's wrong in the situation. For the most part, it seems like, you know, they're trying to really keep it civil for the kids. They're both going to remain in Florida, etc. Perfection year. So perfection year, I have a video on that. Every year of your life is connected to a house in the astrology wheel, right? And so if you are 42, she's 42, that's going to be a 7th house perfection year. Now, based on your own chart and what sign is in your 7th house or on the cusp, that's going to help you understand the planet that is the theme. So since she is a Capricorn rising, Cancer is her descendant, Cancer is on the cusp of her 7th house, the moon is the ruler. So these are themes of emotions this year. Okay, this is a difficult situation. Even when people have made their peace with divorcing or splitting up, it is often very hard, especially people that have created a life, a legacy together, have children, etc. Now, Tom is in the 10th house perfection year at 45. What do we know about the 10th house? Career. So regardless of what happened, even if they hadn't gotten a divorce, Giselle still would have had a 7th house theme of 42. Tom still would have had a theme at 45. A career. What's ironic is Cancer is a sign of his 10th house in this chart. Now let me be careful, because I just said that in his birth chart he has Leo in his 10th house. So how is it possible that Cancer is in his 10th house in his perfection year? When you are doing perfection charts, I have found sometimes it's easier just to use whole signs. It gets a little messy and dicey because a perfection chart doesn't tend to account for double sign, like not double signs, but with Placidus, you could technically have Leo and Cancer in the same house. In Placidus, I have Virgo and Leo in my 12th house, right? In Placidus, I have Sagittarius and Capricorn in my 4th house, right? But in whole signs, you can't do that. It's one sign to one house. And there's pros and cons to using those. So the point that I'm making is either way, right? And I've said this before, if you want to know astrology really well, know whole signs and Placidus. It'll really help you, okay? But the point that I'm trying to make is that I find it interesting that if we use this, the moon is still going to be his perfection year. When I tried to pull up a perfection chart using Placidus, it got kind of dicey. But technically what you could say is if year 45 is the 10th house perfection year, then the sun and Leo energy would still be the theme, right? The sun, himself. So I thought it was super interesting to note that. Yeah, for perfection years, it's sometimes cleaner and neater to use whole signs, but if you use Placidus, you just got to kind of take both into account. Either way, the 7th and 10th house shows us what themes were happening for both of them in their perfection year. Now, Kanye West. Kanye West has been in the media news for several years, okay, in terms of his comments, which have been getting more and more inflammatory, more and more offensive as the years go by. Again, I want to stick to the astrology of it, but you do have a situation where, he made many comments, and, the media scrutiny was around the anti-Semitic comments. Again, you are landing in an abyss of controversy because the comments that he was making, he wouldn't stop. And then they interview, and what was even worse about it were the people interviewing him, okay? Because it's like he says these things that are offensive, then someone books him to go on another show. He says more offensive things, and it's like you even have, people who are interviewing him trying to get to the root of why he said what he said. I personally think, it's giving him a lot of chances to continue to say the same thing over and over again. I do think he apologized. You do have the other hand where it's like people are like, wait a minute, he's saying these offensive things. It's offended the Jewish community. And you have some people like, well, wait, he's been saying things for a while that's offended his, the Black community. And of course, with that conversation comes this idea of, I do think people can be allies, but at the end of the day, it is also up to you to defend your image. Kanye has a lot of people who keep defending the things he said. I do think there are more people willing to call him out now that the comments have gotten more and more erratic over the years. It's not just him being egotistical. Kanye has had many great hits. Kanye, you definitely can say he was a good rapper. Yes, he's a good rapper. But that I do think there's certain personal responsibility when you have a platform it's not that you have to worship everybody. It's about what you say and how problematic things can be. Point being, let's get into it. I've already said it before and I'll say it again. If you have a mutable sun, mutable moon, that energy can be quite unstable. I have a mutable sun, mutable moon. Now, Virgo gets away with it because Virgo presents a little bit better. Virgo can seem like it's okay even when it's not. That's another problem, right? But that mutable moon, mutable sun, especially when you are dealing with Gemini, Pisces, Sagittarius, I've seen those be kind of the struggle to be steady, the struggle to be coherent, the struggle to stay the course. Now, he's stubborn, you know, Mercury in Taurus, Venus in Taurus, Mars in Taurus. There's a stubbornness about it. He's not going to change what he says unless he wants to. Jupiter is in Gemini in his chart as well, which I think is interesting because his sun and Jupiter are conjunct, which means his ego is kind of larger than life. What he says becomes larger than life, okay? And Saturn is in Leo, which is interesting because I want to point to the fact that this means that this entire Saturn in Aquarius has been opposing his Saturn. His natal Saturn has been opposing the transiting Saturn. Remember, Saturn in Aquarius is not about the ego, it's about the collective. But Saturn in Leo is the person who becomes famous, sometimes by hardship. He made a living, you know, or he made a name for himself talking about his, you know, his rise to being in hip hop, his rise to being taken seriously in the industry, right? And so you would look at that and say, well, that can be beneficial to him, right? Well, yes, but not if you're misapplying the energy. Saturn Aquarius is for all of us to become more aligned with what the collective needs. That's what it was supposed to be about. Another thing that I find interesting is that Kanye has Uranus in Scorpio, and there's something called a Uranus opposition, and that is when usually it's around the ages of 42-ish. That's when Uranus opposes your natal Uranus. And since Uranus is in Taurus, it is opposing his Uranus in Scorpio. Now, I don't know if it's directly hit 24 yet for him. I don't think it has. But that is a pivotal time for some people. Now, again, everything in life is how you use it. Everything in life is what's already happened. Everything in life, right? We have to look at those conditions. But that is kind of aligning with the conversations, the comments that he's made getting more and more strange. Even like after him and Kim split up, how he was still like kind of taunting and targeting her and her relationship with Pete Davidson. So, you know, it's beyond, you know, music idolatry at this point, where people who are like, well, he's a good artist. It's really protecting his legacy, which is something I think would be really beneficial. He's got 4 children. You know, it does become a point in time where it's like, it's one thing to say your opinion on things, but we all know in this age, you have to be careful with what you're saying, how you're saying it. He is smart enough to know that. But the Mercury and Taurus in him, it's like, he's very stubborn in his ways. So even when he's wrong, it's going to take him a long time to actually admit to that. Now, what I did also was pull the actual divorce, the finalized divorce. Divorce is final from Kim Kardashian on November 22nd. Now, what I found really interesting was this Mars and Gemini cycle was hitting hard. Mars and Gemini was hitting hard for many people, especially people that have Gemini energy in that chart. What's interesting, 19th degree, I just talked about that on the other slide. 19 is about, could be more considered partnership, marriage, right? 7 is just regular partnership. Those are Libra degrees, and the degree system that I use, it is, I want to give credit. I'm seeing a lot of people use this degree system and not know where it came from. Nikola Stanjanovic, he was a late astrologer. He came up with this degree system. I've kind of, you know, I've adapted it a little bit, but that is where the degree system comes from, okay? Now, I thought it was interesting that Mars in Gemini was conjunct his natal Jupiter in Gemini at the 14th degree. 14 is about money, okay? And we know with this divorce, he has to pay $200,000 a month to Kim for the 4 children, which some people are like, oh my gosh, it's so much. Someone who has millions, it's not as much, I suppose. The reason I brought it up was because Jupiter can deal with money. Jupiter and Gemini can deal with something being out of, you know, something you don't have it within your grasp, right? So I did think that was interesting, perhaps, to kind of indicate that change in terms of action, in terms of the decision, in terms of, you know, him having to now, you know, allocate those funds. Also, Kim Kardashian's Pisces moon is at the 28th degree. I do not know the degree of Kanye West because we do not have a birth time. But her Pisces moon is at the 28th degree, conjunct transiting Jupiter and Pisces at the 28th degree. So think about Jupiter and Pisces being granted something, being granted a wish. It's kind of like whatever she wanted in that divorce proceeding probably happened, okay? But it's also opposing her natal Jupiter at 28 degrees. This story here, I want to say when it comes to major stories, it's not always the story that you care the most about. It is the one that it just keeps coming. The stories, the rumors keep coming. So Amy Robach and TJ Holmes. Okay, affair. So both of these individuals were married. I believe he was separated from his wife, and I don't think Amy had gotten divorced yet. Either way, both were married. Now, how do I say this really quickly? November, stories came out that they had an affair. Good Morning America producers were just kind of like, well, you know, that's not grounds to fire them. So they continued working with them, right? And they continued working and, you know, side by side on the show. Then more information was revealed that he'd actually had affairs with other people that had worked there, other women that had worked there over the course of a few years. And there was actually a recent affair he had with another woman associated with the show. Amy knew about it, but then subsequently after that started dating TJ Holmes. So it was really messy. As of a few days ago, TJ has officially filed divorce. Okay, and I think Amy's husband filed divorce like in November or something. Her divorce was moving farther along, whereas I believe TJ was more just like a separation type of thing. Either way, you know, they've been seen all over, hugging up, kissing up, like they are not hiding this, okay? So that's what was the big deal about that. So what in their charts attracts them? I say this all the time. Opposite sign couples are not rare at all. I see Leo and Aquarius energy coming together so much. It's very interesting as the opposite sign pair. I see Taurus and Scorpio. I see Aries and Libra as well. So what's interesting here, so their suns are opposing each other within 9 degrees. Leo's sun. Okay, first of all, let's look at him. This guy here, Leo sun, Libra moon. We don't know the degree. Okay, Mercury and Virgo. Okay, it's probably, you know, a part of his he probably is a good journalist. You know, Mercury and Virgo, 20th degree, probably a good journalist. He also has some Gemini in that chart. Libra moon, he's able to be unbiased. He's charismatic. We don't know his ascendant sign, but he also has Saturn and Leo. So that means his sun and Saturn are conjunct. So this is someone, he was respected, I would say, like probably like he's always been viewed in certain settings as respected or esteemed, or people like, you know, like his work, you know, they think highly of him. But I also see this kind of like, this is a playboy energy. I mean, Leo sun, Libra moon, you know, it's playboy energy. He's also got Venus in Cancer, 19th degree. He's a man. I think he's always going to kind of be partnered up. His wife, he's been married twice. He had a wife before. So for him, I think he's always going to be, you know, flirtatious, always be wifed up, or always have some woman on his arm. These are, you know, this kind of playboy energy. I wonder what his ascendant would be. I feel like Amy's getting a rise out of this. This is shocking. This is new to her. This is like, and I'm not sure if this is her first interracial relationship or not, but she's got that Aquarius sun. She's maybe having Aquarius moon. I wouldn't be surprised if she has an Aquarius moon. I honestly wouldn't. She's got this Aquarius stuff, Sagittarius, Juno and Sag, Mars and Sag. I wonder if like for her, this is an experience. I think she's excited. There's something about him different from her. That's an Aquarius can value the differences in people in the first place, you know, in general. 17th degree is a Leo degree. And there's kind of like, you know, he may even open her up to different parts of herself that she didn't know really existed. Like it's interesting to her. Venus in Aquarius, she enjoys new novelty. I don't know the situation with her marriage, but this could be the type of woman who gets bored in marriage and relationships. Mars and Sagittarius, it's like, I need something new. I need, you know, this is not satisfying me anymore. And I'm not at all saying she's right, wrong. I know her ex-husband is Andrew Shue from Melrose Place, if anyone remembers Melrose Place. So I don't know anything about, you know, their marriage in terms of like, who's at fault. But yeah, like it's Aquarius, Sagittarius. It's like, one, I'm sure the Aquarius, Sagittarius energy in her chart made also for her being good at reporting. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if her reporting also Took her different places. If she's worked different places within journalism, I'm not sure. Wouldn't be surprised. Jupiter in Capricorn, she's probably good at her job. She doesn't mind traveling for work. She doesn't mind, traveling or doing something outside of her comfort zone if it's going to mean she's successful. Okay, that's Saturn in Gemini. Okay. Mars and Gemini. Like, there's a lot of people with Gemini energy, like I said, who were in the news, like, especially this past few months. She has Uranus in Libra. That can mean strange views on relationships. There's, I don't want to say it's cold-hearted, but I wouldn't be, like, her. Both of them are just kind of like, I don't know how to say this. They have, they're adults. They're consenting adults. But they're still parading this around. Like, they have no shame. They're kissing in public. They're holding it. Like, they don't care. Okay, they're like, we're feeling this energy. We're just gonna, So having Uranus and Libra can mean, like, she's excited about this. Like, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, she has Mercury trining Uranus. She's excited about this. Even Mars, Sagittarius, Uranus. Mars is sextiling Uranus. She's excited about this. It's different. It's new. It's novelty. It's fresh. She likes this relationship. And for him, it's like he likes the attention. He likes, doting on someone. He likes, for him, it's maybe he's getting certain attention that he may not always have had in his marriage. Now, when I say those things, I am not at all saying the other person is wrong. Okay. I don't know enough about their marriages to say that. I'm simply saying what the astrology is suggesting about why these individuals have decided to do this. Now, only thing I can say is that Aquarius, a lot of air energy in someone's chart, you have to keep them excited. You have to keep her excited. She has to be, and I don't know. There are some people who are excited because of the affair. They're excited because, everyone's talking about us, or I'm doing something shocking. And I would, there are those Aquarius people who never had the chance to fully express and roam away from conformity, and they get really excited. So I don't know if that's necessarily her. Venus being the second degree, Venus in Aquarius at the second degree would show, like, eventually she is a person that likes to, like, build a relationship, probably, there's some foundation that she perhaps wants. She's got some 26 degrees as well, Taurus like energy. So there's, like, there's some level there. But in general, this is like, you got to keep her excited. She has to be challenged mentally. He has a Libra moon. Maybe he's up for that. I think she's more daring. She's more daring than him. She's the type, like, hey, let's go here. Who cares if the paparazzi's there, right? And he's a Leo sun, so he'll soak up the attention. So they're both feeding off of this energy, Again, my prediction for him, I don't think this is a man that's going to be single. Whether it's her or someone else, he does not like being single. Libra moon, Leo sun, Venus in Cancer, 19th degree. And for her, it is about needing to feel free. She doesn't like to feel, as long as he doesn't try to control her. I don't know if I haven't interpreted both charts fully to tell you fully if they would be together forever or anything like that. It definitely does give me, like, fling energy. I don't see a ton of things that are, like, the suns are opposing each other. Okay. Leo and Aquarius moon. We don't know if she's a Pisces moon or Aquarius moon, but his Libra moon, could be trining her Aquarius sun, depending on the degree. Mercury in Aquarius and Mercury in Virgo tend to have really good conversations. I do think in that way, though Aquarius and Virgo don't always make great partners in romantic relationships, I do think Mercury, any Aquarius, Mercury, Virgo energy tends to work well. Their Venuses are not really well aspected at all. Cancer and Aquarius have nothing in common. So, it's very different. He's more the romantic type. I think she's more, she's very cerebral. It's all about the ideas. You got to keep her mentally, she's got to feel on her toes. She's got to feel interested. She's got to feel invigorated. That's the way to get her. And their Mars signs are in opposition. So again, Mars and Sagittarius, she's adventurous. Mars in Gemini, he could change his mind, his direction a little bit more probably than her, in terms of different things. So that's something just to note. Their Jupiters are very different as well. Capricorn and Gemini have very different energies. So that really doesn't, help in terms of Jupiter aspects. We know Jupiter can sometimes represent spouse. So I don't know if I see marriage down the line for them. Juno and Sagittarius, she does seek an adventurous partner, or her ideal partner is somebody that's adventurous, someone who's different from her, someone who has different lived experience. So he's got some work to do in terms of his areas of relationships. This is likely not his first relationship, a marriage that, he's been married twice. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. Plenty of people have only been, have been married more than once. But for him, that Juno retrograde is causing something. Especially, I don't have the degree of his Juno. If his Juno is conjunct Uranus and Scorpio, and it's in the retrograde, he's got to dig a little bit deeper to understand what he's truly drawn to and attracted to understand fully the ideal relationship for him. So that was it for this video for 2022. We have 2023 coming up. Please make sure you like the video. Please make sure you're subscribed. Happy New Year.